Welcome back to the Magma Classroom. This episode, we're continuing our stylized character design education journey, that's a mouthful, with professional designer and educator Udi Kalmanovitz. Over the past few episodes, Udi has been deep diving and simplifying the major aspects of a stylized character design. This episode, Udi will be combining all of these techniques and approaching in one focused lecture. This episode will be packed with precious creative gems, so stick around. Join the art space in the description and click the Canvas invite link to jump in and receive feedback from Udi during session. So get your pens ready and we'll see you in the Canvas. Hey everyone, welcome back to Magma Classroom. We are here with our friend Udi Kalmanovitz. Udi, good to see you. It's been a couple weeks. How are you?
Good to see you, buddy. I'm doing great.
That's great to hear. We've been on quite a journey so far of character design and have been the last couple weeks kind of taking more of a casual approach to now incorporating some of these ideas that we fleshed out through education. Today, I guess intending to continue on this free flow design, did you have any thoughts or ideas on what you feel like designing today?
I'll probably go with some faces. I have some ideas in my head, but nothing too planned out. So probably just go with the flow and see what comes up.
I love it. No plans are always better. Let's give you some music.
Oh yeah.
There we go. As people are jumping in, I will be sharing information to join this Canvas. If you're catching this after the live stream, which may be the case, feel free to jump in. There's actually something we want you to contribute. Even if you didn't catch it live, there's access to join the art space. If you haven't already, you need to do that first. And then secondly, join the Canvas will get you right into this space here. So any specific inspiration behind these faces or something that led you here?
Yeah, we're thinking about like doing some zombie pirates, and I kind of have like a cast in my head. So I want to try to put like a few faces that belong to the same like narrative and like the same style, and kind of make them like characters in a movie or something.
Oh, I love that. Now I know you got kids and you got a lot of responsibility as well in the professional sector. So I'm curious, are you able to keep up with? Do you watch any shows, films? You know, keep up with everything that's current?
So actually, first of all, you're right about the fact that like the only things I get to watch lately is like what my kids want to watch. So
yeah.
So like my cinema choices lately are being like basically all the kid stuff. That's what I'm watching these days. Like the last one I watched was Blue Beetle.
What'd you say?
Blue Beetle. Did you see it?
Oh, nice. You saw it in theaters?
Yeah.
What'd you think? Did you like it?
First of all, I think the character is awesome. It's obviously.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Oh, okay. Like, it's obviously like a superhero movies that was like totally like was targeted like a younger audience, like for kids. So it's like a version of like any DC or Marvel movie you see. I think the character actually is awesome. I really like the design of the character and like the idea itself. And it was a fun movie. Like if I wasn't coming with any expectations, and yeah, you know, like at the end of the day, like I judge movies like by did I get bored or not, and like did I have fun? Like just like
totally. I'm so with you on that. I will say like the general sort of status with DC stuff is that I liked what Zack Snyder was trying to build with their universe. I think there was a lot of diplomatic stuff going on, studio stuff related issues that are, I think, contributing factors as to what makes a franchise good or not good, or just a genre good. And they've like almost hit all their stuff and then missed at the same time. Like as soon as they were started to head into the Justice League direction, at least in my opinion, Justice League is like, and I was a big, I read Kingdom Come, the graphic novel, which was it's like what drew me to DC art in general. Alex Ross, I think, is is a lot of like what they based it off of. Incredible work by him, obviously. But yeah, it was like there's like all great moments. I thought Man of Steel was incredible. I even like Batman vs Superman in doses. There were parts of it that were just amazing. So when Blue Beetle trailer came out, I was like, and they've been, to be honest, the last couple movies they've put out, I've just been like, what's going on? The Flash had some great moments too, but Blue Beetle was like fresh, and I don't know anything about the character. And when I looked at the design of the trailer, I was really blown away. Like just the visual elements of coloring and his character itself was really interesting, and it drew me to it. So it's nice to hear that it was good. And I'm like you, it's like I have half of my criticisms around just like knowing a lot about the industry and how films get made and what makes them good and what makes them bad. But then there's also like a part of me that's always searching for anything I watch, just whether or not like I find it interesting, and if it goes in a direction that actually makes me pay attention, I love it. You know, even if people don't like it, I can always usually find something I like. That includes Fast and the Furious movies. That includes like silly movies that can go over the top. But if you're looking at it from the right lens, you can always find something interesting about it, you know? And not to say that we should, and like, you know, because I think a lot of people talk down about content because they don't want it to continue to get made in poor ways. But I think that eventually just kind of becomes the way you think about everything. If you let that go too long, you start to be way too critical of literally everything, and then you can't enjoy anything. And what's the point, you know?
Yeah, you know, we tend like more as we get older anyways, like we tend to kind of like see everything under the filters of like, is it make sense, does it like if it can happen in real life, like there's all kind of like ways that we judge things that we see, and sometimes like if you just like let everything like don't take it too serious and just like you know, like a kid enjoy imagining and like,
Totally. You're so right. That's a good point to hang on. Like, can it happen in real life? I remember that shift happening, at least for me growing up. I'm curious to know if you felt the same in Israel, because I'm sure we were watching different content and also watching some of the same content. But for me, watching cartoons, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of TV like for a certain period. It was like I was very like in a very controlled environment. And then when I was about 7 or 8, I'm actually more like 10 or 11, all of a sudden those floodgates opened and I was able to watch a lot of TV and a lot of movies. And I consumed. It's partially why I am the way I am now, I think, because I consumed. I wasn't allowed to do it, and then I was, and it opened up this like floodgate of content, and I just poured in everything. And I had this lens of just like evaluation. It just kind of made me a little obsessed with it. But there was a shift in like I guess it would be narrative or story, like subject matter, and in terms of just how it connects to people, making it as close to real life as possible became like that was the way to do it. That's the most popular way to do it because people are attracted to that idea. But after doing that for 20 or so years, eventually that starts to muck up the whole, you know, just the to your point, like the imaginative stuff. It's like we're so critical of like, well, that couldn't happen in real life. It's like, well, maybe it's not supposed to, you know, like maybe you don't have to think of everything like happening in real life. The point of imagination is thinking outside of the box and things that maybe couldn't happen in real life. And there's something about that way of thinking that is enriching, and maybe not one way or the other, but you know, a good healthy balance of the both is probably needed for people, you know, especially I think creatives.
Yeah. Uh, I can't agree more. And you know where I felt it the most, it happened to me like a lot of time ago, but like I remember, like when I was a kid, a teenager, I was obsessed with like martial arts movies, like all the classical old time action action stars, and watching like a lot of martial arts movies. And
Jackie
when I
Chan.
was Jackie Chan, also Jean Claude Van Damme,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Chuck Norris as well. When I was like like a kid,
Yeah.
um, Bruce Lee stuff. And then when I was a teenager, I started watching MMA. And once I started watching MMA, the more I got into it, I couldn't watch like fight scenes anymore. Like every time I would watch a fight scene, like it was upsetting to me that it was like so like far off of how I knew like it really occurs. Um, so even in that sense, like I eventually came over it. I told myself, okay, it's okay if in the movies they fight prettier.
It it's like, well, and it's so what's your point? Like, I sorry, I might have missed your point there.
Mm. No, so I mean like sometimes it's kind of hard to let go like of like your common sense, right?
I see what you're saying. Absolutely. Oh, for sure. And I get the point of the connection to UFC. That now it's like in that kind of fighting can't. It's and I think. Did you see Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah.
You know the scene when the Brad Pitt's character, the stunt double, fights Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I love this whole like debate around Bruce, and I think Bruce Lee is a magnificent and incredible role model and human being, did incredible things. But you do have to put the question when you're talking about just fighting. It's like, well, he calls him a dancer. Like the funny thing is like he's because it is like it's a beautiful representation of a methodology that you would use to interact with somebody. I guess to fight, but in terms of its ability or its efficiency at what it's supposed to do, you look at UFC now and like mixed martial arts in general, like thinking about just doing jujitsu against, I don't know, like Roman Greco wrestling mixed with like, all these other things is like, you kind of can't beat it, and you combine stuff. So you put the practicality of fighting into the equation. It's like, yeah, what Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee and some of these others were doing in films might not actually make sense as like the best way to do it. It doesn't take away its value. It's just that like people do it differently nowadays. So I get that. But yeah, man, it brings me back though, because when for me before DVDs and obviously way before streaming, VHSs were the thing for us, and going to the rental store to get movies. My cousin and I would. It was like for a solid 5 years, the only movies we would rent would either be Jackie Chan movies, or if we could get Bruce Lee for sure. I think Bruce Lee was something we discovered later. Jackie Chan was in the 80s and the 90s. That was the one. Oh, there was so many films that he had. I mean, like going back to like Drunken Master all the way up to I'm trying to think of not Blue Streak, but there's so many. There's so many. I forget the names now, but I remember them so well.
Yeah, I think for everyone, like there's like let's say a certain threshold to what he can accept when he watches movies. Like two different dudes will sit and watch a James Bond movie, and for one, let's say he runs and he jumps from one rooftop to another rooftop, and he can like totally accept it. And the other guy was saying, you can't really make that jump.
Right, 100%. Yeah, I know that's so true. It's partially why I liked Jackie Chan so much, is that because he did his own stunts. He was, although unbelievable as some of these moments were, where it just kind of felt like, the way he blocked would just like, you just like touch it and it's a block. It's like, it wasn't like an actual block, but still the movement was there. He was doing the actions. And that's one of those things that, like, that was when realism is started to become like the I don't know, the current goal for everybody. It's like, how can we make stuff more realistic? John Wick, you look at John Wick is like an extension of that now. Gunplay, all these different, like, forms of martial arts and wrestling and takedown moves and those things that don't seem possible, but as he goes through it, you're like, man, that looks pretty real to me. The suspension of disbelief kind of sets in.
Mm-hmm. I really like the fight scenes in the, like, all the Born Identity series. Like, I felt like, even though there was a lot of things that weren't that realistic, but like the way that it was filmed, and like the kind of like how gritty and dirty and like not pretty it was. So that felt for me like kind of realistic. I really liked it.
Yeah, like you're talking about the whole Jason Bourne series.
Yeah.
I agree.
One of my favorite, like the first three ones, like they're like those. This is one of my favorite, like, TV, like, movie series. Or
the first one was mind-blowing. Like, it was so fresh and had like a unique take on that, like, realistic version of James Bond that is way more practical and great sequences. And for sure, man, the first one was incredible. Hey, would you mind putting the sequence panel?
Yeah, sure.
We got a couple people jumping in here. I just want to make sure everybody can see. We have open canvases. Feel free to jump in. And yes, the theme is very open. We're just kind of casually hanging out. Feel free to draw whatever you want. So what's the most active streaming service in your household? Is it Disney Plus or?
No, from in our house, it's Netflix.
It's Netflix. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That would have been my next guess. Do you feel like this is something I've been starting to feel more often, or more lately than ever, with the access to content, like streaming services offering so much content where you can just watch and watch and watch? I've kind of come to feel like that access has made content less valuable. Like, I appreciate it less. Do you ever feel that way?
Yeah, totally. Like, first of all, there is a lot more content, like a lot more content these days. Like, I had like a kind of like a debate with a friend not long ago, where we talked about actually like music and like all the greats, like, from the past. So we mentioned, like, Jimi Hendrix, Freddie Mercury, whatever, Elvis, Michael Jackson, whatever. And he was saying like that these days you don't see like people coming to like the same level of like uniqueness, like having their own identity, like really building like kind of a brand and like a vision of who they are, and like they're not on the same level like at performing. Like everything seems like much more coordinated, much more like clean in a way. And I was actually disagreeing, like for me, because like I'm more like analytical in that way. I was saying like there is no way that out of all like the extra content that and like there are so much artists coming out, there is no way that you can't like replicate like the same amount of talent. Like actually, if you look at history, basically we are getting better at everything we do. Like each generation we only progress. We use the knowledge that we got like in the past, and we add like new knowledge to it, and new abilities, new skills. And I was saying that back then there was like much less like competition. Like if you were the king of pop, you were basically were like standing against like, let's say like 10 more artists that are comparing you to those 10 artists. And if you think about pop music today, there are like tens or maybe hundreds of different like artists. So yeah, I kind of forgot where we were starting, where I was going with it.
It made me think though, I mean, and maybe this will kind of flesh out your point, but when I think about that, you know, it's like where there's opportunity, I think human beings thrive. Like we thrive in our ability to show up and bring something to the table. So like with music, for example, you go back to like pre-Hendrix, when Hendrix and others are coming to the stage in rock and roll and looking and seeing this progression from the 40s into the 50s and like into the early 60s of like what was being done with the guitar, and also quietly or not so visible to everyone is the jazz movement happening in the background, and this coinciding with like just this growth phase of culture and also race and intersecting of race and intersecting of cultures all kind of coming together. You get this like crazy explosion of like rock and roll and like just like wild transformations, you know, and like that opportunity was there. I think with music as it's grown, as the business side of things has kind of taken over, you look at like, you know, I think to your point, and I think this is what you're saying, which if it is, I agree. Or rather, I would just say like, I think people, as you say, like you're given a certain amount of information and understanding of something that came before you, and then you grow and build that. Depending on what you got before, it does kind of define or make it more likely that a certain outcome is going to happen. And when you look at music, it's like, yeah, it's transitioned so much. I think there's a lot of people out there that are making amazing additions to music and doing new things as we've always done, but it doesn't feel as impactful, I think, just simply because there isn't as much room for it, because there's so many people. And you see the same thing in the art communities too. It's like, I don't know about you, but for me, coming up in like the digital art revolution, I mean, I feel like I was raised in it. You know, when I was 15 years old, that was when I started using ZBrush. I started learning about Photoshop. I started learning about Maya. Nobody around me was doing this, but you know, Pixar was blowing up. It was like the early 2000s. Lucasfilm was doing great things with the prequels, episode 1, 2, and 3, just in terms of visual effects. People can say what they want about the movies, the plot, but if you just look at the art, I mean, they were making great strides in just the technological achievements. And in that industry, like artists that were growing, that were like becoming pillars in the digital arts world, were becoming famous artists, people that I followed and all my friends followed, and you know, everybody wanted to get to their level. And that was like that, there was that room for opportunity, and there's so much opportunity on that digital wave. And now that seems like it's kind of come to its, you know, to its place where it's pretty consistent. There's a lot of talented artists out there, but everybody's working to get visibility. And to get visibility means you got to just put out a lot of content, posting a lot of stuff on social media, and oversaturating a market, which is the same thing that happened to music. So now we're all looking for this new place for art. And it's one of the things that, you know, I think is very attractive, and just one of the natural things about Magma that is so great is that it does offer this like other aspect of art, like communal art, kind of getting back to what it's like to just create art and talk to your friends and connect with people and be involved in it. Not like forget about the sharing for a moment. Just think about the process and what else we could be doing in this space to evolve as well. And I think that, you know, it requires inspiration, and I think that is inspiring, to be inspired by those around you, and, you know, to actually connect, because you lose that connection by just dropping a like or a comment on somebody's post on Instagram or wherever you're posting your artwork, ArtStation or whatever. That has value without a doubt, and it will always have value, but how much, you know, it's changed it pretty dramatically. I think 10 years ago that had so much value. Everybody obsessed over getting to Instagram and ArtStation, maybe a little bit longer now, but I think it's changed now. It's not as exciting. The thrill is over. Just like content is oversaturated in streaming platforms, it's like we need to have a healthy balance of it, which means, you know, a little self-control when it comes to that stuff, or just, you know, thinking outside of the box and looking for that next opportunity to bring something new to the table. And I think that's always the most exciting thing about humanity. It's like there's always going to be something else. It's just a matter of, I guess, depending on how old you are, how set in your ways you are, how open-minded you are to change. That's the thing. It's like change is hard, and it's hard, especially when you've been doing it for a long time. You know, like we've been doing digital art this way for maybe not exactly this way, but, you know, the last 20-25 years pretty consistently. No,
you know, I heard like something really interesting last week. I was listening to a certain podcast, and they were saying like how basically every stimulus that we get, that we perceive, is the same as like physical stimulants and like things that your body like get accustomed to. So imagine like if you drink coffee, then the coffee wakes you up, and then like you kind of get accustomed to it. Then you drink like 2 cups of coffee, and then maybe you can drink 3 or 4, and eventually you get to a point when you drink coffee and you can go to sleep. And it's the same way with probably someone smoking or someone drinking, where basically your body getting used to it, and then you need more to get the same amount of like stimulus.
right.
And they were saying that it's like the same thing like with the things that we watch. So like imagine that if you have basically, like, let's say I talked about like the past, like stars, mega stars, like there was only one Freddie Mercury, there was only one Michael Jackson, only one Elvis, and so on and so forth. But like imagine that today basically there is so much, like so many artists coming out all the time, and everybody wants to do something new. So like you will see someone dressed like in a totally like exaggerated, I don't know, concept, and you will see someone dancing in a way, and someone is like, I don't know, have costume, and someone else. So like today, in order for you to get like excited, like the bar is really high. Like something needs to be really out of the ordinary, like to get you like just to react to it.
Definitely. It's such a good point. Yeah, because like it makes you think about incentive. Like what are the major incentive points for people? And this isn't a judgment or criticizing in any way. I think this is just the way that it is. One of them is success. You know, you see an window of opportunity, and you can be good at something. Some people are super skilled and just have this ability to just do, and you can be super successful at this thing. So you go for it, and you get a lot of reception, positive reception, attention, success. It all just kind of flows, and then you just keep going. Like, how many artists out there are doing the thing that they actually love, versus just filling in the gaps in a VFX franchise that they've been doing for 5 or 6 years and they just mastered it. Like, each artist probably has a part of them that likes to do other things, can do a lot of different things, but doesn't get a chance to do the thing they love as much. And then there's, and that comes with its own pros and cons, I'm sure, that have pretty wide spectrum of both for sure. But then there's also like just doing it because you actually love making art. Like, I'm sure you've probably had waves of inspiration where you feel like you're just at your purest form of being an artist. Like, I've had times where I feel in my mind that what I'm doing, like in terms of creative pursuits and the things that I'm making and the things that I'm like thinking about, are just because I really like doing it. I've had a good chunk of time where it was like probably at its best, and I wasn't concerned about like the success part. I wasn't concerned about these other things, that mostly because I had a job and I was confident. So I wasn't thinking about it as, and mainly because my art wasn't the job. My art was actually stuff that I was doing on my own, and I was doing other things for my job. And it was a nice balance for a time. But then eventually that kind of got out of control, and my incentive was kind of messed up. It's like, my incentive to make art was simply just to grow and learn and get stuff out and just make things. It's like something that always drove me as a kid and is a part of me. So it's like, depending on which of those you're pursuing, it could help or hurt you. I guess that's the point. It's like, the incentive behind those things is important to a certain degree. It's like, if you're going to make a job or a career out of art, I think that's when it becomes most important, is to understand what is your incentive behind why you want to do that. Because if you don't know that, and you get into that job, and 10 years later you come to find out that, like, oh, I've been doing this for the wrong reasons, and then you lose, then you get that creative block, because everybody probably goes through that creative block at some point for whatever reason. So it's almost just like mental preparation, or being aware that those pitfalls do exist. And, if you want to make it a job, you have to make sure that you're going to be able to either continue to repeatedly do a lot of the same things sometimes and have your own outlets, or do it for yourself. Like, how many opportunities out there are there now for people to create things on their own and tell their own stories, and host a Patreon and get a book published, or do things. It's like, those opportunities are realistic and very available now, and actually not that hard to do. It just takes the courage, I guess, to get there, which is another thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm trying to kind of like started with something a little bit more exaggerated, and then like kind of became a little bit more I don't know how to.
These are great.
Say it, but yeah, I'm trying to get them like to feel like kind of like they're in the same kind of vibe.
I see it already. There's a consistency to it. Have you ever had any thoughts or desires to build your own game or universe, world?
Yeah, of course, man. All the time, all the time. Of course. Um, like I think that eventually, like to actually make like this huge project, you really need to make time for it. And I think that like if you want to, as an artist, if you want to have like this big project that you wish to bring to life, you need to realize like if you must, or if you must like make this project as the artist, or like kind of taking the role of the producer. So like like creating a game, if you like as an artist insist that you will create like all the art for the game or whatever, like it might take forever, and obviously you still need help. um, but sometimes like maybe you have an idea for something, and it will be kind of like even more possible to make it come to life if you take a step backward and like be the one like actually managing like the project, and have like other artists work on it, and like developers, or
Right.
yeah.
No, that's true. It's like letting go of control. It's like you can only do so much. You can only envision so much, and if you do have ambitions to do something that large, you can really, it's like you can only define sort of like the style guide for it, and then delegate.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, like it's also I think like as an artist we kind of have like an artist ego. We really need like, as an artist you really feel the need to tell like audience that I was the one that were drawing it, like that painted it, that designed the characters, that did
Right.
whatever. Like but if you think of like a movie producer, where it doesn't insist of playing every role and like being the director, and but he's the one eventually that makes the thing come together. So yeah, I have ideas all the time, but like um, it needs to really really click, or feel like everything aligns together to actually follow through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've learned that lesson over time for sure. Definitely, it's there's go through waves where just you get ideas and you move on it, and it's like you do the best you can. I've had projects where like I'll be like, yeah, I'm so excited to do this thing, and I'll spend 2 or 3 months just kind of like plugging away at it, and then if it doesn't go as far as you wanted it to, that's always been something that's happened to me. Is like I didn't get it there, and then I kind of got burned out. It's like that's the real thing. Is like, number one, you gotta love that thing so much that you're gonna be willing to like be around it for a long period of time if it's that big of an idea. That's a reality. It's like I always think about Guillermo del Toro's Kronos. Like he worked on that for 10 years or more, I think, before he actually got it made. And it's just like, wow, that's nuts to be involved in this thing for that long. It takes a certain level of patience, and I guess just putting yourself in a mental palace where you're not quite. I think you need to have multiple things happening at once in order for that to be possible. That's a different beast entirely. Is like managing many projects in order for them to all get done, which is to say, like, you're not attached to any one thing then, which means that your ability to keep going on it is greater because you don't have such an obsession about this thing. That's kind of like I've kind of observed as a good way to get that done. It's like thinking about that with art projects too. Is like, well, then don't think about mastering the ones. Like, yeah, you might have a quick idea about building a world or a universe. Maybe you flesh a few things out when you have an idea, but it's just one thing you have going on, and you kind of bounce around in order to keep your attention like pure, I guess. Because I don't know about you, but I need that. I'm not as like utility in that regard. I need to have like an excitement about it in order to get the best out of it. If I'm not excited, I can't deliver, and that's probably shows like my skill level too. It's like at some point it just becomes effortless and you can crank it out, but I don't know. I think I have blockers when it comes to doing things that I'm not super excited about. It's really challenging to just like get there when it comes to art.
Yeah, me as well, because like as artists, like we tend to be driven by inspiration, like this moment of inspiration, and like it kind of create like this urge to bring something, to let something out. The thing is that a lot of artists are also tend to be inspired by different things every other day. And like the thing that makes you like really excited today not might be the thing that gets you excited like next week. So a lot of times like you can be really inspired and into something, but like I will speak like by my own health, like it, I'm really good at sprints, right? Like if it's a sprint, I can like be totally focused, like and work from morning to night on something.
Yep.
But like I need it to be short distance. Now, if it's a marathon, like you have to know that you will face those times where you're not inspired anymore, and you don't feel like doing it, and then you need to know yourself if you're the one, like the kind of person that can actually go and continue just on like discipline and dedication and doing things then even when you don't like feel that excited anymore. Like because let's say if you have an idea for a certain project, it might be a book, a game, or something, and it will take like about a year to produce. So like, do you really know, like can be confident that you will have like this feeling of inspiration and enthusiasm like for a year from now? Like the way I know myself, I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's a really good point. It's like, and that's something that I think each of us can relate to in seeing commentary. I'm saying that I started learning 3D a few months ago. Now I'm making a PS1 style horror game. Wow, nice. With friends, and it's much harder than I thought. On the side, I'm creating a puzzle game with a little scale. Oh, nice. So yeah, on the side, you've got this going. I mean, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That best of luck on that, by the way. And as Udi's kind of describing here, I think the name of the game in that regard is it is a marathon. I had a really good fortune to sit with Richard Taylor, the founder of Weta Workshops, and they're the ones that were responsible for Lord of the Rings and what was the most recent one they did? Immortal Engines. They got a bunch of great stuff, incredible content, of course, with Lord of the Rings in general. But Richard Taylor being like very closely connected to the old practical effects world and the evolution of digital effects, and he talked about this a lot, and if they're doing it at this level, I think all of us can relate and apply this to our lives, no matter what. But he talked about that idea of a marathon, like they treat their creative team, they're talking about it as much as possible, ensuring that they do things like practices within their day-to-day sometimes to account for the fact that they're in a marathon. It's like you got to account for artists and creatives needing that time and space. Like you might have some days where you're like, man, I just really don't want to freaking work on this right now. Like I'm just burned out on staring at this piece of artwork, and you need to have something else that you can do. They manage that. I don't know exactly what they do, but I think you just can find ways to mitigate that. And having puzzles on the side that you're working on, definitely nice. Take your brain off your mind off of that for a bit and reset. I think I'm guilty of this probably more than most. I will just masochistically like just force myself sometimes to just keep pushing, put in more time, and every once in a while I get something out of it, you know, like I'll get something by pushing through that wall. But more often than not, it would be better if I just detached and went and did something totally different, you know, and work your brain in a different way in order to reset.
Yeah, I think like it's a good idea to actually like separate working on something for like creating a project than working for something for fun. Like eventually, you know it very good as well for yourself. Like if you like get a job creating art, it will be very soon that where you feel like okay, it's a job. Like it's a job. Because even though you're very lucky to being paid for like drawing or painting or designing characters or whatever, but eventually probably you wouldn't have to do it like at that moment. Maybe you do something else, maybe you draw something else, and it becomes a job. But if you want to create a project, I guess like you kind of like need to treat it more as a job. And if you're not saying to yourself, I'm doing it for my own fun, like might, but then you kind of treat it differently. Like just by saying that you're doing it like for pleasure, that means that if you won't feel the pleasure, you won't do it. So if you kind of treat it as a project, and expect not to want to do it like all the time, then maybe it's for some people it will be like a healthier approach.
Yeah, that's a point. That's a good point. Is like the association of like a task that needs to be completed versus a passion project, where passion projects lead to maybe a little bit more controlling aspects, like being more obsessive about controlling the way that it goes, and needing it to be perfect because like this is mine. I want this one to be amazing. Versus a job, sometimes you have a timeline, you got to get it done within the timeline, and that sometimes means that you can't do it exactly as you'd like to do it. You know, that's like the artist way. I think in a lot of areas is the controlling aspect, the ego, the need to control, and at least for me, I could say it's always been, you know, to provide my value. My value is what I can do. So if I can't do this, then am I valuable? What the truth is that your skill really is the value. In terms of what you output isn't actually always the case. Like isn't like the defining characteristic as to what your value is. In reality, it's more so like how well can you execute on getting those visions done in a way that allows you to keep your sanity, number one. Number two is like to keep doing it, you know? And I think to your point earlier, I think you said it really well. When it comes to bigger projects, like big visions, you got to look at how the professionals do it. Look at how, and at least to a certain extent, not exactly how they do it. I'm not saying that's the best way to do things, but sometimes it's not. When money gets involved, it can destroy creative visions and projects. But the delegation aspect, you don't have to do everything in order for you to execute the vision. That's the most important thing I think to remember is like, you can't control everything. In reality, nobody's able to get this stuff done as an individual. You need a team, and you need a team that you can trust. And most importantly, I guess it's like, how do directors get other people to see their vision? How do art directors get other people to see their vision? That's a skill in itself. And if anything, it's like one of the more important ones if you want to do the bigger things, because then your job isn't necessarily about doing the actual work. It's about how can you share your vision with other people so they understand and are able to support you in that regard and make it happen as a group. That's, I think, the best case scenario for the big stuff. You know, we're not talking about just a quick doodle in your notepad or in your notebook. It's like these are high level projects that many people fail at, you know, and very few actually get made or done the way that they wanted it to.
Yeah, and probably if you're also the one like kind of like making the thing like progress and not doing everything by yourself, maybe you will have better chances to like see it through.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm really interested like in art, like all aspects of like for me I can really see like an idea like these days, and like I can enjoy it even without me creating it. And I think like it's like a skill or something that was changed when I started like doing art direction, and instead of like being the one actually creating stuff, like giving more feedback and trying to guide like visual language or style to a certain direction. And then you kind of get accustomed to not having to create everything yourself, but more like, okay, I want to see like the things this thing comes together and like being completed and looking great. And and you can also come to a point where you can actually get excited sometimes even more about like the art coming out from the artist you work with than your own in a way.
Uh-huh. That's a beautiful thing, I think. And speaking to an art director, I think this is like, in this regard, I think is super important for people to understand. And that detail, I think, that's amazing that you feel that way. And and I would imagine that's connected to, I guess, in the sense that like the bigger vision is actually being achieved, and that's exciting. It's like, if the vision is the goal, how it gets done technically doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But as long as you're, I guess the this is where we're in the controversial stages these days, though. Is like, technically speaking, how it gets done, as it relates to AI, becomes controversial in that like it doesn't value the artists and their time, and their work, and that becomes controversial. But in all other aspects, and I think, and maybe to say like that's an understandable point. Outside of that, technically speaking, like who's doing it, how it's getting done, it's a matter of just making this thing happen and doing it well, and ensuring that it provides some value to the creative world too. I think like when you do a project that like shows off a lot of talent, and you can be proud of the team, that's so exciting. I can imagine just to see that happen, play out.
Not only that, like think about it, like when you go on Instagram, you follow this artist where sometimes you like what they're doing. I guess most of the time you probably, the artist you follow, you like what they're doing more than you like your own work. Like, right, like you kind of like follow this artist where you really like admire what they're doing, and you can come to a point where maybe you're even not the best person to produce the what you want to produce.
Mm, that's interesting. I'd love
It's
to
not,
unpack that a little bit, because like that to me is essentially, that's like an evolution of the human experience, and that if you can separate yourself from something and still find joy and appreciation for it, I feel like you've leveled up to that next place, because that is one of the biggest walls to climb or get through or over for, I think, most of us, right? Is like that need to be fulfilled in that regard. If you don't have that, it leaves a whole window of opportunity open for all kinds of other things to explore. You don't have to be worried about that aspect anymore.
yeah, totally. And like eventually, like you know how you have like these singer songwriters And like sometimes those singer-songwriters, they're like not the best singers. They just like kind of insist to sing, to be the one performing what they're writing. And you can listen to a song and you say, oh, that's a good song. If only this guy or this girl were this
Right.
girl were the one singing it, then it was really amazing, right?
Totally.
So it's kind of the same thing. Like sometimes you can have an idea, and actually like if you're the one, if you're able to kind of like say, okay, let's assemble a crew of artists that will see it through, and you can be the one like leading the ship.
Totally. Yeah, that's amazing. Take a look what everybody else is up to. I want to give a quick shout out. Got Info here. This is looking great as always. What is this character from? Or is it from, is this an original?
I'm not sure. I really like the sharp lines.
I do too. Yeah, really well done. Chinny. It's just random. Yeah, that's great.
Just
And
a
it's
random character.
well done. This is looking fantastic too. I like the different angles, playing around with expression a bit. Awesome. Oh wow, nice. Oh, this is cool. Everest. I didn't see Everest jump in. How's it going?
Like the shapes.
Yeah, I always love your texturing and shading. Deca, oh, this is cool. That's really wild. Is this some form of a mask? Like samurai mask, slightly. Awesome. Awesome line work too. I don't know what I'm doing. Hey, that's always the most fun. Where you're like, I don't know, I'm just kind of I'm just winging. This is really interesting. Love. Like an Oni mask. Yeah, okay. Got it. That's what I was thinking. Nice. Wow. Like profound strokes. These are very illustrative. I love that. Don't see that a lot in Magma, which is great. Great to see that. Oh, nice. Take it easy, Amp. Thank you for dropping in. Thanks for the contribution. It was awesome. They're looking awesome. How do you feel?
Thanks, man. Yeah, I kind of like him. I don't know who this guy reminds me of. He reminds me of someone.
It reminds me of so many 90s movie villains, like live action or animated. I think both. Like I think of like is it a ponytail in the back kind of flowing out there? Yeah.
He's the guy fighting with the hero before the boss, and he's get thrown from a train or something.
Yes, totally.
The one that like you're waiting because you know it will have like a special death or something.
Right, for sure.
Isn't it funny, like when we watch like action films and you have like this villain and you know he's going to die, and you have like this kind of build up, and if he isn't like getting killed like in a very special way, we get disappointed.
Totally.
Like,
oh yeah,
right?
For sure.
We can actually like you actually think, oh, like he killed him like so simply, or like
yeah, it has to be. It's for sure. It's escalated so far these days. Like I don't know. I think back to like Clint Eastwood, like Western movies, like when like the baddies and the heavies, the different like villain type characters that became tropes. You know, they just became like textbook tropes, and then like action movies evolved where you get different ones, different tropes, but we know them so well now. So I was just watching The Equalizer with Denzel Washington. I've never seen any of those movies. Like, kind of surprised I never caught him. But there's like a scene where he's like in a Home Depot, like home supplies store, and he has a gun, or he has access to a gun, but he doesn't use the gun. He uses like drills and like nail guns and like all these like things from the store to like defeat and kill all the villains. And it's like that's like a form of like that's making sure you get satisfaction out of like the action sequences that you're watching, instead of just like it being quick, which could be very easy to do. It's like, now we're gonna draw this out and make it real complicated.
Exactly.
we change up this music. Come down to the 15-minute mark here. We'll do another quick review here, take a look at what everybody else is building. Very nice, man. You're already getting to coloring. I love it.
Yeah, I thought maybe I would actually get to also throw some like a little bit of shading, but I don't think I would get to it. Maybe next time. I kind of want to see like let's see what's happening like on the other canvases.
Yeah, go in, give him a little review.
So I really like this one. It looks amazing. I really like the shape, like the shape of the nose here, and like the sharp angles. They look awesome. Really well done. I really like it. Like, I have one suggestion here that I think that can actually like help like being more like exact with like the placement of the head on the neck. So like with these two characters, like here at the side, it kind of feels like the neck is not connecting in right position to the head. So probably what I would suggest is actually take the entire face and like pull them forward, like kind of try to imagine like instead of the neck being connected like under the face or like under the front of the head, like kind of try to imagine it connected more to the back side of the head and take the face a little bit forward. I think that will be like a good idea for those characters. like the two on the side. I really like the shapes. That looks awesome. Really cool stuff. So actually, I have like few tips that I can give on this one. Um, the one is actually about the sword. Now, it's not that important, but it's something that we can learn from it, like and kind of like also execute it in different stuff. So a lot of times we kind of thinks like we think in the silhouette and we think about the contour. So let's say I have like a character, and then I say, okay, I want to see a sword coming out like from the back. Um, and we kind of try to just like place the sword the way we imagine it. But we need to think of two things. First of all, proportions, and the other one is perspective. So let me show you what I mean. So in like in real life, like in proportion, usually our hand, like the length of our hand from the bottom of our hand to the tip of the fingers, is about the same length of our face. So if I'm placing my hand here, it will be like about the same length of my face. So that can actually give us like an indication about what will be the size of the hands of this character. And like usually when you see a katana, like the Japanese sword, usually you can grab the handle with like both hands. So the handle should actually like be kind of long. Now I imagine that like if this character wanted to grab like this sword, like her hand, like one hand will actually grab the entire like handle. So I would probably make this handle like longer. I would think of it more like in that manner. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but I would imagine like a handle that can actually have like enough space for two hands. That's one thing. And the other one, uh, maybe is even more important, is actually the perspective. So we are basically what we're doing. I'll show you two different examples. Let's say, or even more, let's say I'm drawing like this handle right here, and I'll do another one, and I'll do another one. If I'll continue this handle and I'll do something like that, will use very slight and like arcs. Then that means that like even if I'll see my guard, like probably I see very little from this guard here. And then if I'll decide that I'm giving like a bigger arc, then that means that I'm seeing more from this guard, and so on and so forth. So if I'm doing like really something like this, then that means like this sword is already pointing towards me. So just by doing this, basically what I'm telling the viewer is if the sword is standing like straight, or is it like pointing towards you, and so on and so forth. So like if this sword, like if I'm seeing here the guard of the sword in this direction, that means like this blade goes straight into the body. Like this blade that don't is not placed like in an angle that can go along the back. It's actually supposed to like come out of here, boom, and go through the body. So we need to take this into consideration. We kind of need to actually imagine like the volume of the chest and like of the torso, and then imagine like this blade must go. Let's say we imagine like this blade from the side, and that would be like another good example. So let's say this is like our torso right here. Okay, so right now this blade, like the angle is like this angle or something, and for it to go, it needs to go this way. And we want to think of the blade that is actually maybe going this way, that it can actually go along the back and not go like inside the back. So that's something that we can fix, and just like try to think not only, okay, I'm placing a sword and thinking of the contour, actually try to think like follow through with the whole shape and imagine like how the sword will look behind his back.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah, just a quick sketch alone gives you some good visualization of what that perspective would actually look like.
You mean here?
Yeah, just like your comments on that alone. I actually didn't even catch that until you pointed it out. It's like, oh yeah, I guess for sure. It's like that could be a quick thing you could solve by doing just a quick side profile sketch. Get the angle right.
Can try to get like I'm throwing like a little bit of white on top of it. Like probably I would go with something like that. Like I will just, first of all, I would think like on the length of the handle, so I'd probably want to go with something a little bit longer. Just a second, let me change my brush for some reason.
Yeah.
So probably I would think something longer, like more, probably this long, and then I would do one of two things. Like either I give like a very, very slight angle to this guard, so we will understand that it's more on the side and not like facing towards us. And that means very slight angle also on the cap here. So it will look like it more goes straight behind them and not like going towards us. And if I wanted to actually give it an angle, I would probably give it an angle in the other direction. Like maybe it's the handle is tilted like to the front, because like the top of our back, of our back is actually tilted like in this direction. So probably I would say, okay, let's make the blade go here and not here. And that will actually like tilt the blade into a different direction. So then I would probably do something the opposite way. So I will show a little bit of the guard, but I will show the top side of the guard. And then I will show like the top side of this cap. And it will actually, it brings the handle forward, but it takes the blade backwards. So that will like actually look like it really take into consideration like the body and the volume of the character. So
yeah, really interesting thoughts there. I love it.
I find your line art very interesting. Like I really like those small lines and the way you kind of scatter the all the lines and the fine details. And your process is interesting as well. I like it.
Yeah, it's incredibly unique. It's very attractive in that sense. It just has a very unique style. Love it.
I would actually give like a comment on choosing colors, which might be helpful. Obviously, this will probably weren't meant to be like realistic, like skin or coloring, but like for everybody that is viewing, like take something into consideration. We have like certain colors with a level of saturation that we can view only on like screens, only on monitors. Like eventually, like the screen is like, how do you say, it gives out light. It's like a flashlight, and there will be like amount of saturation we can only see like in on digital platform. And you won't see it not on real life and not in like in print. So every time you, specifically with like characters, I believe, and specifically if you're doing something organic, like let's say you're drawing, painting the skin, painting the clothing, or something like that, I would try not to go like really, really saturated, because it feels like it gives like the vibe of like it being more like digitally made, and it feels like less natural. I would probably use like saturated, like if it was a painted metal or something, or plastic. And but usually for organic stuff, I will keep the saturation a little bit down. Cool stuff. Oh, I like it. I will say, like, I will comment again about like the placement where the neck next to the head. Like, if the character has like a slight angle, like we already see the chin like coming forward, and it won't be a line in the like next to, like near the center of the neck, because like the face is coming outwards. So I would probably like grab the entire head and like move it a little bit to the left, so it will look like the neck connects more to the back side of the head. The same thing for like this character. Um, so I would actually like show two things which are can be very helpful. So one thing is like, if I imagine like the back of her head, like let's say this is like the base of it, and let's say that this is like the front part of the face, right? So her neck right now looks like it's coming out of here, like the way it's placed. And we kind of want to get a feeling where it more connects to like the back part of the skull. So like trying to imagine that it supports like the sphere and not like the front side of the face. So that's one thing. And I will comment about another thing, which I think it's like kind of issue for a lot of like artists, usually at the beginning, and I made obviously the same mistakes. Like sometimes when you draw a face and you think about the style and the lines, you're not taking into consideration like the different planes of the head. And when you're not taking into consideration the planes, you will place the different features probably like not correctly, like not in the right position, or not in the right place. And I will show what I mean. So let's say that I'm drawing like more or less the same angle of head. So we have here, this is coming out in, and this is coming out. So let's say I'm doing something similar. Right, and it has the eyebrows like that, and something like that. Okay, so right now, what I'm imagining, like before I carry on, I'm first of all, I want to be very aware of the center, and then I'm kind of like splitting it to different planes. So I'm saying, okay, this is like the top plane, like the her sculpt, and this will be like the forehead, and this will be the front plane of the face, and I'm trying to think of the different directions the, the face is going. So this points to the side, this points upward, this points to the front. And the reason why it's so important to not only to render or to shade, obviously, but like let's take the eyes for instance. Our eyes are placed only on front plane of the face. So if you will take like your hands and you place them on like the sides of the face and you go this way, you will see you won't catch your eyes, you won't scratch your eyes. Like your eyes are totally on the front plane and they are not going to the side plane. And sometimes we're not taking those planes into consideration. Like for me, your side plane is probably like breaks about here. Like this is already the side of the face, and the eye probably wouldn't like get all the way there. So like if I'm doing like something like that, I can like know, okay, I know for a fact that I can have the eye like going all the way to this like border between the planes, and like I would feel more confident like about the placement of the eyes, instead of like taking the eye like too far to a different plane in the face.
That's really good advice. And yeah, it's like it gets into the aspect of like, I guess when I look at, and we know this artist well here at Magma, Steven Silver, people who do certain styled characters that like they're representative of three dimensions still, and yet don't offer those details, right? So a lot of that is like assumed in the outline. So it's like, I guess the value I see there is like at the very least being able to outline something that the dimensions and the planes gives you like visual markers to kind of identify just the overall silhouette lines, where you don't have a lot of shading details, or maybe that's not like what you're going for in your style. You could still represent those things by outlining it in that way, and then figure out how much detail you want to stack up on top of that, or keep it very minimalist in that way.
Exactly. And also in order to like actually give the feeling of like form and structure and depth, you don't really need to draw everything. You actually, you're not necessarily need to draw the thing itself. Like we can draw things around something, and then we will see the something. It's like when you're dealing like with silhouettes and negative space. So basically it's the black that creates like the white in the middle. But like it's the same thing with details and like with shapes. Like let's say take this like piece of hair for example. Like it's very small piece of hair, but you can already tell like it goes from the back to the front, and that his head is round and is going like in this direction, you can like see like this like very small piece of hair coming from the back and going with the depth of the shape of the head. So that means that I don't really need to render it or to shade it to see the different planes. I have like a totally different shape or a different object that goes around this shape, and basically once it goes around this shape, it defines this shape. So if I like the way I place like the something on the head will convey the volume of the head.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, just real quick. The sweet satisfaction of just laying in a little bit of clay. It's so great.
Yeah. Like that's probably like the funnest part for me.
Yeah. It brings to mind, I forget the movie with Tobey Maguire, where it's like they live in a black and white film, or they live in a black and white world, and then all of a sudden they start slowly seeing the world in color. And just like you get so used to seeing the all right, very best. Yeah, thanks for dropping in. Awesome work today. Great hanging. We'll see you next time. But yeah, just like living in black and white world where you just see a sketch and an outline and all that stuff, it becomes very comforting. It's like there's an association of feeling to it. But then as soon as you move to that next level of color, it's just like a different thing. Not to say one is better than the other. I think it's awesome though. It's such a great feeling.
Like also when you know when you look at the sketch, when you look someone else like actually coloring the sketch, so a lot of times you can imagine like different colors. You can say, oh, I really imagine like his hair is going to be like black, or like his skin is going to be this way, or
Yeah, 100%. No, these are fantastic, amazing job. This is so great to watch you go through these today, and thank you for reviewing all the works on the additional canvases. Thank you everybody for dropping in and adding some really great artwork here. This has been a good one. We have plans to evolve this format, and I don't want to talk too much about it, but we'll be updating you guys soon. On the topic of designing characters and how we can explore making this more fun, we have some ideas and things that we're looking to put in place here. So we'll be notifying you guys in Discord for those that are keeping up with us here. And if you're still watching after this live event has ended, thank you for your contributions in these canvases. And Udi, thanks so much, man. This has been so much fun as always.
thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
All
My
right, y'all.
pleasure.
Yeah, well, we'll be back again in a couple weeks, and everybody have a great week. Sending positive inspiration vibes to you all, and have a great week. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.